Night my car died on Route 9, it was 11:43. I know the exact time because I'd been watching my phone battery drop, 41%, 40%, 39, calculating how many calls I could make before it went dark. It was February. Not the pretty kind of February where snow looks clean and soft under streetlights. The ugly kind. The kind where everything is gray ice and the wind comes sideways and gets inside your coat no matter how tight you pull it. I was 28 years old, sitting on the shoulder of a highway in the dark, and I thought, if I disappeared right now, how long would it take anyone to notice? I already knew the answer. That's the worst part. Let me back up. I grew up as the second daughter in a family where being second meant being invisible. My older sister was everything my parents celebrated out loud: the grades, the college acceptance, the boyfriend from a good family, the job with benefits. I was the one who wanted to study graphic design, who took photographs of strangers on the street, who cried at commercials and kept a journal and didn't know what I wanted until I was 23 and finally said it out loud. I want to make things, visual things. Stories told in images. My mother's response was to look at my father. My father's response was to say nothing. The silence lasted about 4 seconds, and in those 4 seconds I understood everything I needed to understand about what they thought of me. I moved out at 24, got a small apartment 30 minutes from home, took on freelance work designing social media content for small businesses, tutored high school students in art on weekends. I wasn't rich, I wasn't even comfortable, not really. But I was mine. My time, my choices, my small living room with the good lamp I found at a yard sale, and the plants I kept alive through sheer stubbornness. My family tolerated this. That's the word. Tolerated. They didn't disown me. They just made sure I understood, every single time I came home for a holiday or a Sunday dinner, that I was the one who hadn't figured it out yet. My mother would ask how the art stuff was going with a specific tilt of her head that communicated everything. My brother, 2 years older, an account manager at an insurance company, recently married, would make jokes about my budget that everyone laughed at, including his wife. His wife, who I'll call my sister-in-law, was the only one who sometimes caught my eye afterward with a look that said she knew the joke wasn't funny. Her name is Faye. I want to say that clearly, Faye. She deserves to be named. Faye married my brother when I was 22, and I watched her slowly disappear into that family the way you watch a photograph fade if you leave it in the sun too long. She was warm, creative, the kind of person who remembered everyone's coffee order and showed up with donuts on bad days. My brother is not a cruel person. He's just entirely comfortable, and comfort in that family looks like never questioning anything, never rocking the boat, never noticing when the person next to you is slowly running out of air. Faye noticed me though. She was the one who texted after those Sunday dinners. "Hey, you good?" She was the one who asked, genuinely, what I was working on. She was the one who once stayed late after a family birthday and helped me wash dishes and said, quietly, "I don't think they understand what you do. But I do. I've seen your work. It's really good." I thought about that sentence more times than I can count over the next few years. Back to Route 9. My car, a 2014 Honda that had been slowly developing opinions about cold weather, had decided that 11:43 on a Tuesday in February was the right moment to express its final opinion. It just stopped. I coasted to the shoulder, tried to restart it 4 times, and then sat there in the dark with the hazard lights clicking. I called my brother first. Voicemail. Called again. Voicemail. Texted. Car broke down on Route 9 near exit 14. Can you come? He read it. I saw the read receipt. No response. I called my mother. She answered, but her first words were, "It's almost midnight, what do you want me to do about it?" I explained. She said my father had an early morning. She said I should call a tow truck. She said, "This is why I told you to buy a reliable car," as if I had chosen to be stranded on purpose. I called my sister. She didn't pick up. Texted me 20 minutes later. "Sorry driving. Can't help tonight." She was not driving. I knew she was not driving because she posted a photo of her living room couch and her cat 40 minutes earlier. But I didn't say that. I just put my phone down and stared through the windshield at the gray dark. 29% battery. I called Faye. Not because she was my first choice. She wasn't even my fifth. I called her because I was out of people and because some small stubborn part of me thought maybe someone would show up. She picked up on the second ring. I heard noise in the background. Television, I think. She said, "Hey, what's wrong?" Before I'd said anything other than her name, because apparently something in my voice gave it away. I told her. She said, "Okay. What exit?" I told her the exit. She said, "Stay in the car with the hazards on. I'll be there in 40 minutes." 42 minutes later, her headlights pulled up behind me. She brought a jacket, not for herself, for me, because she correctly assumed I hadn't dressed for standing outside in February. She had a tow truck contact who answered after hours. She sat with me on that shoulder until the truck came. And then she drove me home and came inside and made tea that I didn't ask for and sat at my kitchen table like she had all the time in the world. She didn't make me feel like a burden. That's the thing I keep coming back to. She didn't sigh or check her phone or say anything that let me know I had inconvenienced her. She just showed up. I did not tell her that night what I was sitting on. 3 months earlier, my grandmother on my father's side had passed away. I hadn't been close to her. She was a quiet, private woman who I'd admired from a distance, sharp-minded, independent. The kind of woman who'd run a small fabric business by herself for 30 years and never asked anyone for anything. She left a will. She left a will that skipped my father entirely and went to me. I don't know why. I have theories. She knew my father had money. She knew I didn't. She had watched, maybe, from her own quiet distance, and she had made a decision. The number was $340,000. I sat in the lawyer's office while the number was read aloud and did not let my face move. I drove home, parked in my lot, and sat in my car for a very long time. I thought about my mother's tilted head question about the art stuff. I thought about my brother's jokes. I thought about every Sunday dinner, every family moment where I was the punchline or the afterthought or the one who hadn't figured it out yet. I decided not to tell anyone. Not yet. Not until I knew something I needed to know. Here's what I did with that money in the months before the car broke down. I paid off my student loans. I put a significant amount into an index fund and left it alone. I paid 3 months ahead on my rent. I set aside a budget for my business, better equipment, a real website, a course I'd been wanting to take for 2 years. I did none of this loudly. I didn't change anything visible. I still drove the same car. I still wore the same clothes. I still came to Sunday dinners and said the art stuff was going fine and watched my mother do the tilt. I was watching. I was waiting. I didn't have a plan, exactly. More of a question I was trying to answer. The question was, who are these people, really, when they think I have nothing? The car on Route 9 gave me my answer. After Faye drove me home that night, I lay awake for a long time. Not because I was upset about the car, because I kept thinking about the 42 minutes. The jacket she'd brought for me. The tea I didn't ask for. She had driven 40 minutes at midnight in February for someone her family treated like an afterthought. She hadn't thought twice. There was no calculation in it, no favor economy, no expectation of being paid back. She just came. I thought about the things I knew about Faye that other people didn't seem to notice. I knew she had quietly given up a job she loved, something in events planning. After my brother decided they should move to a neighborhood closer to his office, I knew she had mentioned once and never again that she'd wanted to take a ceramics class, and my brother had laughed in a way that wasn't quite mean, but wasn't quite kind either. I knew she handled all the household finances because my brother found it tedious and she did it without complaint, and I knew that, without complaint, was costing her something. I knew she was tired. The careful, hidden kind of tired that looks fine from the outside. 2 weeks after the car incident, I called her. Told her I wanted to take her to lunch. She sounded surprised in a way that broke my heart a little. Over lunch. A Thai place she'd mentioned wanting to try for 2 years but had never gotten around to. I told her everything. The inheritance. The decision to stay quiet. What I'd learned the night of the car. She was silent for a long time. Then she said, "Why are you telling me?" I said, "Because you're the only person who came." She cried a little. I cried a little. We ate our noodles. It was one of the best lunches of my life. 6 months after that lunch, my family found out I had money. It was an accident, if I'm honest. My aunt, My mother's younger sister, visiting from out of town, mentioned to my mother that she'd run into a mutual acquaintance who worked at the law firm that had handled my grandmother's estate. Nothing specific was said, but my mother, who has always been skilled at extracting information from the spaces between words, put the pieces together and called me. The conversation lasted 20 minutes and was one of the more surreal experiences of my adult life. She did not begin with, "Is this true?" or "I heard something." She began with, "I had no idea your grandmother felt that way about you. We should have a family dinner to celebrate." The pivot was so fast and so seamless that I genuinely had to sit down. Over the following 2 weeks, every member of my immediate family found a reason to reach out. My brother called to tell me he'd always believed in me and that family takes care of family. My sister texted a stream of messages that started warm and progressively got more specific, ending with a mention that she and her husband had been looking at a new car. My mother arrived at my apartment unannounced with a casserole and talked for 45 minutes about an investment opportunity my father had been considering that just needed a small amount of additional capital. I listened to all of them. I was polite. I made coffee. I did not write any checks. At my brother's house the following Sunday, my first time there in several months, I watched Faye move around the kitchen quietly while my brother held court at the dining table, explaining to my father why my money would be better in real estate than index funds. Faye caught my eye over the kitchen counter. The look on her face was the same one from all those years of Sunday dinners. The one that said, "I see this. I see you." Afterward, while my brother was showing my father something on his laptop and my mother was on her phone, Faye and I stood on her back porch in the cold for about 10 minutes. She said, "You don't have to give them anything." I said I knew. She said, "I hope you know I'm not saying that because I expect anything." I told her I knew that too. She asked how I was doing actually, and I told her the truth, which was that I was tired of performing being okay. She said, "Then stop." I want to be precise about what happened next, because I'd noticed that this kind of story gets flattened into something cleaner than it actually was. I did not deliver a speech. I did not gather my family in a room and reveal anything dramatically. What I did was much quieter and, I think, more permanent. I helped Faye get a lawyer. She had been considering it for a while, she told me. The considering itself taking up enormous amounts of quiet energy. She had a list of things she needed that she'd never said out loud to anyone because saying them out loud would make them real. I sat with her while she said them out loud. I helped her find someone who specialized in family law. I told her that whatever she decided, whether she stayed or left or landed somewhere in the middle, I would help. She decided to leave. That decision was entirely hers. I want to be clear about that. I helped her find an apartment, a nice one, in a building with good natural light and a pottery studio 3 blocks away. I covered the deposit and the first 3 months of rent, not as a gift she needed to pay back, but as the kind of help you give someone who would have done it for you in 42 minutes in February without thinking twice. I did not tell my brother in advance. He found out when Faye told him. That conversation is hers to tell, not mine. My mother called me the day after. The conversation was not warm. She said I had interfered. I said I had helped someone who needed it. She said Faye had made her choice and would have to live with the consequences. I agreed that Faye had made her choice and said that I thought it was a good one, and that I supported it completely. My mother said some things after that which I don't need to repeat here. I listened. I did not apologize. When she finished, I told her I loved her and that I hoped she'd be willing to talk when things felt less raw. Then I ended the call. I sat on my kitchen floor for a little while after that. Not because I was devastated, because something that had been very tight in my chest for a very long time had finally, slowly, loosened. There's one more thing I need to tell you. Faye's apartment had a second bedroom, in the early weeks of her being there, before she had furniture for it, when it was just a bare room with good light. She called me one afternoon and said, "I've been thinking. What if I started doing ceramics again?" She had started when she was in college. She'd been good, she said, but she'd let it go because it felt like a luxury she couldn't justify. I drove over the next day with coffee and we looked up ceramic studios together and found the one 3 blocks away that offered open studio time on Wednesday evenings. She sent me a photo 6 weeks later. A small bowl she'd made, uneven around the rim in a way that was somehow exactly right. Her hands were gray with clay dust. She was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. I saved that photo. Regarding my family, my mother and I talk now, occasionally. It is cautious and honest, which is more than it used to be. She has not apologized for the things she said, but she has stopped asking me about the art stuff with the tilt. That's progress, maybe. I've decided to count it as progress. My brother has not called since the divorce was filed. I have not called him either. I think about whether that will change someday. I think it might, eventually, when there's been enough time for both of us to understand what kind of people we want to be to each other. My sister sent a card at Christmas. Inside, she wrote, "I've been doing a lot of thinking. I hope we can talk soon. I haven't called yet. I'm going to. I'm just not ready to rush it." My grandmother was a woman I admired from a distance for most of my life. I'll spend the rest of my life being grateful I had the chance to know her through what she left behind, not just the money, but the decision it represented. The belief, however private and unspoken, that I was someone worth investing in. I try to hold that the way she held her fabric business carefully, without asking for permission, showing up every day and doing the work even when no one else understood what you were building. I still do freelance design work. I have better equipment now. My website is good. I take the projects I want and turn down the ones I don't, which is a luxury I do not take for granted for a single day. Faye is in her ceramics class every Wednesday. She is, from what I can see, happy. Not the performed kind of happy that costs you something, the real kind. The quiet kind that shows up in a photo of gray clay dust in an uneven bowl, and a smile you don't have to explain. That's the ending I have. It's not a dramatic one. No one won anything on a game show. No one win anything on a game show. But I drove home alone one night after a very long phone call with my mother, and I cried a little, and I sat in my car in my parking lot and I thought, the people who were supposed to show up at exit 14 didn't come, and the person who wasn't supposed to be my person brought a jacket she'd thought to grab on her way out the door. You can spend a long time trying to earn your place in a family that has already decided what you are. Or you can notice who brought the jacket. I noticed. I've thought a lot about why my grandmother skipped my father and left everything to me. I'll never know for certain. She wasn't the kind of woman who explained herself. But I think she saw something. Not success, not potential in the way people usually mean it, but character still forming, a person still trying to figure out who she was going to be. And she made a quiet bet on that person. That kind of trust changes you, not because of the money, because of what it asks you to become. I think about cause and effect a lot now, not in any mystical sense, just in the plain, observable way that life tends to work. The way you treat people when they have nothing is exactly who you are. My brother read that text and put his phone face down. My mother answered and made me feel like I'd called at a bad time on purpose. Those weren't new behaviors, they were the same behaviors I'd been absorbing for 28 years, just finally visible in the clearest possible light. A crisis at midnight strips away every excuse. You find out who people are when showing up costs them something. And Faye showed up. She grabbed a jacket for me, not herself, and drove 40 minutes without calculating what she'd get in return. That's not a small thing. That's actually the whole thing. What I gave Faye wasn't charity. I want to be clear about that. I didn't rescue her. She had already been quietly gathering the courage to change her life long before I offered any help. What I gave her was time, the kind of breathing room that lets a person stop surviving long enough to make a real decision. She made that decision herself. The ceramics class, the apartment, the life she's building, that's entirely hers. I just moved a few obstacles out of the road. Resilience, I've learned, is not the same as toughness. Toughness is what you perform for people who are watching. Resilience is what you do in the 42 minutes when someone calls you from a dark highway and you just go. Faye had been resilient for years inside a life that didn't have much room for her. She just needed someone to notice, and I think that's the thing I keep coming back to. Intelligence isn't only about being smart in the ways people grade and measure and reward at Sunday dinners. It's about paying attention. It's about knowing the difference between someone who shows up and someone who just happens to be nearby. It took me a long time, too long maybe, to trust my own read on people. I had spent so many years being told implicitly and explicitly that my judgment was off, my choices were soft, my path was unclear. It turns out my judgment was fine. I just needed to stop outsourcing it to people who had a stake in me doubting myself. I'm still figuring out who I am to my family. My mother and I talk. My sister sent a card. My brother is quiet. None of that is resolved. And I've stopped needing it to be. Some things take a long time. Some things maybe don't fully resolve. That's okay. I can hold space for the possibility of something better without waiting for it to happen before I let myself live. My grandmother made a bet on a person still becoming. I think the least I can do is keep becoming.